Welcome to Caribbean Tea. From St. Vincent, Kendall Morgan in Georgetown, Guyana, Dennis Cabral, and I am Vivian Williams in New York.
Yesterday, I submitted a letter of resignation with immediate effect to the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Aubrey Norton. There was not sufficient clarity for me on the way forward in the PNCR as it is currently constituted. It became clear to me that in good conscience I could not remain where my contributions are undervalued and my voice silenced.
This is Caribbean Tea, the podcast where we start a pot on the region's most pressing issues, social, legal, cultural, and political, with unflinching honesty and thoughtful analysis. Today, we are taking a look at a theme that is reshaping the Caribbean's political and social fabric, the rise of women leaders in the Caribbean. The elections in Guyana have come and gone, and what a political storm it was. It humbled the once mighty PNC, now contesting under the APNU banner, and shook up a landscape many thought immovable in their lifetime. The chief disruptor, businessman Asruddin Mohammed, mockingly branded sanctioned man by the ruling party, but whose presence on the ballot became a stinging sanction against the opposition and a sobering warning for the PPP. Out of the turbulence emerged something even more significant: women claiming space in national decision-making. Amanza Walton-Desir, with her Forward Guyana Movement, formed just weeks before the election, won a seat in the National Assembly. And while Laura George, stepping forward as the AFC's prime ministerial candidate, did not enter Parliament, her rise as an Indigenous woman leading from the front is remarkable. This is part of a larger Caribbean story, from Mia Mottley in Barbados, commanding global respect, to Penelope Beckles Robinson in Trinidad and Tobago, now leader of the opposition, to Jennifer Gerlings Simmons, who recently became Suriname's first female president, a milestone for that nation. Women are no longer sidelined.
And this is not without precedent. The trail was blazed by women like Jamie Junior Charles of Dominica, the Caribbean's first female Prime Minister, Portia Simpson Miller of Jamaica, who twice held that office, and Kamala Persad-Bissessar of Trinidad and Tobago, the first woman to lead her country. Today, Mia Motley stands as both a regional leader and a global voice on climate and justice. Their journey opened doors for a new generation, and in this moment, Guyana stands at the center of change. The rise of Amanza Walton-Desir and the emergence of Laura George reflect a nation and a region where women are no longer rare exceptions in leadership, but a growing force shaping the future.
Today, we're focusing on Guyana, where this transformation is unfolding in real time. Our guest is the Honorable Amanza Walton-Desir.
Can I start off, Ms. Desir, Walton-Desir, by first of all thanking you for joining us and asking what really inspired your transition from law into politics?
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Vivian and Kendall. I was asked to serve. Simply put, I came from a political family. Both my mother and father were senior functionaries of the People's National Congress Reform. And I was posted at the Civil Aviation Authority as the General Counsel when, because of some of the work that I was doing with a particular local government organ, I was asked whether I would consider continuing, the legacy of service that my family had given to party, to country. I said no because I was not interested in becoming involved in politics at all. I was more of a backroom type person. I loved to operate behind the scenes. My mother, however, prevailed upon me. She said, it is something that you should do. I believe that you have the grace for it. It's something you're called to do. And as mothers usually are able to exert this unusual amount of pressure on us as children, after some weeks she prevailed. And so long story short, I agreed to campaign with as it then was, the APNU AFC, and I was appointed a parliamentarian in 2020. And the rest, as they say, is recent history.
And now, as Vivian alluded to earlier, congratulations are in order for the Forward Guyana Movement, which was just formed a few weeks before the elections. How did the Forward Guyana Movement come to life, and what was the vision behind it?
Well, it was, like I said, important for me as a matter of integrity to be honest with myself, to be honest with the people of Guyana. And for those who know me, if I get involved in something, it's 100%. It's never halfway. So what I realized in the National Assembly is that the way our politics is configured is because of the winner takes all political system that we have. It's always a case of you will have your say, but we will have our way. And so it doesn't matter how erudite a presentation you've made, how salient your points were. If the government of the day did not want to take that on board, nothing would make them take it on board. And so I in my own deliberate judgment, I said, Amanza, you have two choices. You could continue to be a part of a system that does not serve Guyanese ultimately, or you could be part of the change. That, coupled with the fact that in the PNC as it was at the time, I did not believe that there was space for me. It was made clear that there was no space for me there. And so, after much prayer and soul searching, I decided that this was the thing for me to do. With the blessing of my family and supporters, we launched out. And here we are 2 months later with a seat in the National Assembly. And someone pointed out to me the historic nature of it, because it has never been in the history of Guyana where a woman, an Afro-Guyanese woman, has led a political party into parliament. So I didn't even realize that they had those implications to it until about a week ago when this was brought to my attention, actually.
Amanza, I want to pick up from where you left off there. Kendall asked the very important question, what led you to form the Forward Guyana Movement? My segue to that is to go back to the launch of the party, and I want us to listen to a clip and then come back and talk about that.
This decision has been an agonizing one. Arrived at after much soul searching, prayer, and the counsel of trusted family and friends. The PNCR is the party in which my grandparents, my parents, my aunts and my uncles gave yeoman service. It is the party that helped to shape my identity and my convictions and my sense of duty towards this country. It has been the only political home that I've known. I'm sorry. The doubts, I will tell you, have been many, would my Guyanese brothers and sisters understand. Would they see this as a betrayal rather than an act of conscience? Would my family's legacy of service be misunderstood, or worse yet, used against me by those who benefit from the status quo?
What we heard on the tape was a woman taking a giant step, a very important and historic step. But that moment seems to suggest that it was a very hard decision. There were so many questions as to how this giant leap that you were about to make was going to be accepted by society, by so many other people, that there were all of these questions that you were fighting with. Why is this so, and why was this necessary?
Because, Vivian, when you stepping out into the unknown takes courage. The opportunity to be paralyzed by fear and doubt, they were never absent. But like I said, I grew up in the PNC. My parents served, and I came to a place where I had to reckon within myself about how does Amanza proceed being her authentic self with the people of Guyana, understanding that where we are requires more, that taking this country forward requires more, struggling with the issue of loyalty to party as against loyalty to country. So there were so many competing thoughts and issues. And of course, the concern, like I said, that my motives would be misread. And in retrospect, they were misread. I was accused of being selfish. I was accused of being self-centered. I was accused, as if it is a bad thing, of being ambitious. And so there were days of just being literally dragged. But, I remember David Rudder has a song called Day of the Warlord. And he says, but we have a higher purpose, and a good heart must seek its horizon. And that song really kept me through a lot of tumultuous days, Kendall, because there were many. My parents are no longer alive. And so I had to battle with, would they feel betrayed? Would my family's legacy of service, like I said, be misunderstood or used against me? Because in Guyana, there is this paradigm that if you were born into a political party, you have to be that until you die. So it was a question of, how do I honor what I know Guyana needs? How do I honor that without disavowing from whence I would have come? And so what you saw there is the struggle, because the men and the women in the PNC are great people, We had an issue with leadership, and based on the results which are now out, it's very well understood why I had the issues that I've had with leadership. So it was that tension, Vivian, that tension of knowing what is required and mustering the courage to step out. Because to step out from an established institution that's 60-something years old, that has a machinery and a mechanism in place, and just stepping out on a conviction that this is what has to be done. And, we are grateful that our hard work, a 6-week campaign, has paid off. Never in the history of Guyana has that been done. And I could not do it without the team and the supporters and the people of Guyana, who believed, who, just so going to the regions, and the men and women who say, MP, we see you and we understand, and you have our support. And they came through, they voted, and so the historic step has been made, and we will be entering Parliament when it is convened in a few weeks.
As a follow-on to that, Amanza, and this may be a question that perhaps may have been asked as well to some of the names we mentioned in the introduction. As a woman leading a new party, what were some of the challenges you faced from within the political system and from the public?
Within the political system, it is you must know your place. Within the political system, it was this sometimes not so subtle sexism, the microaggressions, I had one former minister refer to it as a dress parade. And so, that is the type of micro and other aggression that we've had to face and overcome. And sadly, from women too, the internalized misogyny was an issue. But overwhelmingly, I would say the young people, the young women who are passionate about defying stereotypes, and housewives who felt unseen, and young men who decided that we want a vision for this country. They stepped up to the plate. And so we're grateful for that. But certainly the sexism and the microaggression and a woman must know her place type attitude that we saw. There is still, unfortunately, a paradigm existing in Guyana that women are incapable of leading and incapable of making decisions. And I'll tell you, I'm very saddened to see that my former party, even though they won 12 seats, only 3 women have been sent to Parliament of the 12. Only 3 women, and that is such a step back from what we've historically been. The last Parliament, it was a 50-50 split, and so it's quite disappointing to see. But at the same time, a lot of people have been messaging me and saying, "Okay, Amanza, we understand. We were happy with what you did, but now we see." And I guess that is the crucible of leadership, that you have to step out and trust that circumstances and history will vindicate what you've done.
And so they say don't split the vote because, somehow they see us as property. And this is a mindset that permeates the leadership across the political landscapes for years and for decades. They see us as belonging to them, which is why they can go into Parliament, they could sit there, they could not represent you, and then they come every 5 years to say, you know what, don't vote for them.
Looking back through the campaign, Amanza, was there any particular criticism or scrutiny that you faced that really hurt and really caused you to do some soul searching?
There was one defining moment where, and I've since gone past it and I've since forgiven, but somebody that I considered a brother on the campaign trail suggested that to vote for me would be to vote for the PPP. And that stung. There was nothing else bothered me, because this is somebody that I consider a friend and a brother, and would have come through the struggle with, and that stands out in my own mind. But what I drew from that is vindication that what I was doing was right, because I know that he knows that is not so. I know that he knows that is not true. Here you are, being forced to practice a type of politics that requires you to be inauthentic and requires you to engage in what you know to be just rank on truth. And this is not naivety. This has to do with just a personal understanding of who you are. I remember in the US elections when, was it Barack Obama, President Obama was being attacked, and John McCain said, no, I know that person. That man is an honorable man. We may have our disagreements, etc. But he stood up, even though they were on the opposite sides of the divide. And so for me, that really reinforced my desire, my intention. It reinforced the importance of authenticity and being able to stand and deliver a clear message and winning people, not based on what they are voting against, but what are they voting for? What is it? What are my plans? What are my proposals? Just don't vote for him. Don't vote for him because he's the boogeyman. But why must you vote for me? And so that saw us refining our message to the degree that we began to say to the people of Guyana, this is what you are voting for. This is why it is important that you vote for us. And so, yeah, that really stood out, Vivian.
So when you launch, you seem to be agonizing that the present framework in which you were existing wasn't one that was allowing you to realize your full potential. And that it seems to me as if you felt stifled and not given the recognition that you think you rightfully deserve.
People who truly know me, they know that I would prefer not to be recognized. It's odd, but I am not one who hogs attention or requires attention, or thrives or feeds off of attention. It's quite the opposite, in fact, which is an interesting study, because as a politician, you have to sometimes necessarily be the opposite. So that's the first point. The challenges that we face will not wait. And I do not subscribe to a culture where if you are able to stand up and speak up, you do not do it because you wait for a leader to fail and then you pounce. To me, that is like a vulture surrounding a carcass that he knows will die to get an opportunity. And I do not subscribe to the vulture mentality. No, the change that Guyana requires doesn't wait. And people may say, well, you struck out and the configuration remains the same. But I would argue that what has happened is that we've struck a blow at the racial and ethnic voting that has come to characterize Guyana's politics. And it is a major step in the direction of getting our Guyanese brothers and sisters to vote policy, to vote principles, etc., above race. I do not harbor any illusions that this is a sprint. This is not a sprint. It is a marathon. But we are in the door. Our feet are in the door. We are in the seat of the National Assembly, and we can only build and become stronger and better here in out.
Yeah, I was going to stick with the campaign for a little bit more and ask if you found it particularly demanding that you are new party, just a few weeks old, coming up against two established parties with their base, which obviously would have stretched throughout the country, and also a third party that was getting a lot of attention for a number of reasons. Did you find that added to the demand for on your leadership and on your resources?
Absolutely, but it was in a good way, because it helped us to focus in on what did we bring to the table that the people of Ghana needed to hear. Because we didn't have the big rallies, we couldn't afford it. We didn't have the massive outreaches, etc. We simply did not have the resources. But what I think Guyana saw in us was a group of men and women who were determined to make a difference. Look, the field was full. You had Abdu, 60-something years old, institution, the PPP, commanding the government coffers. You had Win with Azruddin Mohammed, a billionaire who could basically do and afford whatever he wanted to. But that challenge caused us to refine our message. It caused us to speak to the heart of the people of Guyana. It caused us to be able to craft our message in a way that said to them, look at what you want for this country. Stop, take a look. We completely stayed away from the bartering that we saw, because what you saw was almost a suggestion that people were available for purchase. So that if one party says, we will give you $100,000 a month, the other one would say, look, we're going to give you 150. The other one would come and say, oh, you'll get 200. But we were able to explain to the people of Guyana that, look, this is not sustainable. Those promises are not sustainable. But we promise you, if you fix the political system in which we operate, everything that you need for a peaceful, successful, thriving life in Guyana will be provided to you because the resources are there. What is broken is the system of delivering it to you. And, enough people believed. And so now we have a voice in the National Assembly, and that is what we're going to be pushing for.
You were able to win a seat. Amanza, you were able to win a seat in with a few weeks of campaigning, announcing and forming the party just a few weeks before the polls. How were you able to put together the infrastructure that resulted in you defeating a party that had more than a decade of existence, that had been part of the government before, and I'm speaking now of the AFC, that you were able to pretty much do better than the AFC at the polls? How were you able to sort of pull that together within the short space of time?
Social media and good old-fashioned groundwork. I mean, so we had to build the infrastructure from the ground up. There were pre-elections qualifications leading up to nominations day that we had to put in place. We had to go into a minimum of 6 districts, obtain hundreds of signatures, obtain dozens of candidates. And we just did it. We just did it, surrounded by a group of men and women who said, you know what, we are going to do this. And just 24 hours. I mean, there were days that we slept at the office. We would take a break. We would when we were doing quality control of our lists and sanitizing our lists, etc., I would take a nap for 2 hours. Somebody would relieve me. So it was a very, very interesting operation because, of course, we were operating on a shoestring budget too.
What lesson we could learn from your campaign? I could think of one, but I'd like to hear from you.
Just that, listen, if you put your mind to it, you could achieve it. Very, very simple. If you believe it, you can achieve it. You put in the work and it will be done. And I don't know what is the lesson that you took away, but that was the one that stuck with me the most.
Well, one of the reasons I think that you did, and I say one, that you were able to pull things off as quickly as you did, I think your campaign broke away from established norms and you sort of pursued new paths. And in that respect, what my observation is that there was a lot of youth in your campaign and a lot of reliance on young people. Many of the traditional parties are still sometimes lean too heavily on the older generation, and I think that the youth that you had as part of your movement helped to break ground more rapidly. I think that's one of the lessons that any party that is seeking to break ground and gain market share in the political landscape of the country has to really look significantly to youth and how youth could form part of that sort of tool to break into unknown territory. So I think that's one of the lessons that could be taken away from your campaign.
I am staying within the rules. What you are doing is interfering with my ability to speak to the people of Guyana. This is the people's house.
With one seat, you surely have a voice, but how effective that voice will be is a big challenge. How do you think that you might be able to use that one seat in a way that is meaningful and being a catalyst for change?
Well, a lot of it is going to be advocacy, and not only advocacy, but listening, going into constituencies, listening to people, and bringing their concerns to the parliament. You know, the etymology of the word parliament is the people's house, where the people speak, and to speak. And so it will be a matter of hearing from the people and making sure that their voices are given sound in that National Assembly. And like I said before, there's so many avenues. You have questions to ministers, you have budgetary reviews, and hopefully the sectoral committees, the standing sectoral committees, which have been all but defunct for the last 5 years, that they begin to meet and they begin to function. And their issues, you could use petitions, their private members day, where we could, as opposition MPs, bring legislation. So you'll see a lot of that being utilized, etc. The difficulty that we have, though, is the PPPC administration has failed in the past to have parliament regularly. There have been instances where we've gone over 90 days without a sitting of the National Assembly, when by convention, once parliament is in session, it ought to meet once a week. And so there's going to have to be a lot of public pressure. There's going to have to be a lot of public exposure of this PPPC administration, because they have a lot of money to spend on propaganda. And what they're able to do with that money is to, in the international press, present a particularly well-curated veneer of democracy. And so we are going to have to use all the means available to us via social media, via friendly international media, to make sure that their feet is held to the fire.
I want to go back now to your launch again and listen to you for a brief moment and come back and talk about that again.
Guyanese are frustrated, not because of age, but because they do not feel connected. So I am now stepping forward because I know I can make a difference. And although it may be uncomfortable for me and for some others, Guyana simply cannot wait. Guyanese are out of patience with poverty in the midst of plenty.
How could you help to make that connection and to help to leapfrog what Guyanese really need is to be seen, to be heard, and to be part of the process and the progress of the country? How do you intend to do that?
You've got to keep in the government's face. You've got to be in their face. You've got to be unafraid to step up and challenge these guys. Guyanese have got to understand that this country is ours. And so we have to build it. We have to demand. Power concedes nothing without a demand being placed on it. It never has and it never will. And I think Forward Guyana has already demonstrated through the court cases that we've brought, through the approaches that we've made to GCOM to provide information, that we are serious about having questions answered. We do not subscribe to this fact that it's a fait accompli. No, absolutely not. If you worry with where the winds are blowing, sometimes you will never raise your sail. And we are about being upfront. We are about requesting and demanding transparency and accountability. And that is what we will continue to do. That is the least that we can do to represent the people of Guyana. I say to my team all the time, we have no control over the results because we do not control the system. What we have control over is how we show up for the people of Guyana. How do we fight for the people of Guyana? That is what we have control over. And so we're going to be in their faces. It's very simple. We are going to be in their faces. They're going to hate to see us coming.
Have you lost friends in this process and stepping out?
I think so. But then maybe they weren't friends. Because, I think friends, the friends that have remained are what I value the most, because for them, it was more about me being authentic and me honoring this fire that they see. And so the ones that have left maybe were not meant to continue. And I don't dwell on that, but I'm thankful to God for the ones that have remained. And the ones who have come back to say, hey, we didn't see what you were seeing, but we understand it now. Um, so yeah, it's you grow and you learn, and that's a part of the evolution and growth, isn't it?
Well, one of the reasons we thought it important to speak with you is not only have you led a party into parliament with a seat, but I don't recall any party that was founded by a woman, and that even when women step to position of leadership within the political structures of the country, it was at the pleasure of uh, the male dominated structures of these parties. But here it is, a woman who is the founder of this party, the founder of the movement, and on her first outing was able to do very well. Have you reflected on this, and how has it made you feel?
I reflect on the people that came alongside me, Nigel London, who has been of immeasurable support, the guys from VPAC who have, been up and about with us, making sure that the message is out there. None of this, I would be able to say I did it. It was we. It was a team. I am here because of the faithful men and women who saw something in what I was seeing and said, you know what, we want to be a part of this. And so I share this honor with them. But just immensely grateful, just full of gratitude for the challenges, because I think I'm an alchemist by nature. And so I sort of thrive in adversity, if that makes sense. And so for me, it was growing, it was learning, it was tweaking, it was knowing when to pivot, it was knowing how to refine your messaging, but at all times being authentic. Guyanese can spot a fake a mile away. And so, you have to at all times be authentic. But yeah, gratitude is the word. Gratitude is the word. My family, my children have been immensely supportive. Those men and women who are close to me, who held me up literally when there were days that we could not continue just because of sheer physical exhaustion, right? Because you're not only presidential candidate, you're photographer, you're editor, you're video editing, you're doing so much because you have a small core of people. So we had to learn to multitask. And I'm so proud of just the level of content and output that you've seen. To hear people say to us that when they survey just the messaging across political parties, that ours was the most cogent, really meant so much, and that we were able to run a clean campaign. It wasn't slandering or crass or base. That meant a lot. And so to be able to contribute to the lifting of the quality of campaigns, we are immensely just filled with pride and so grateful.
You alluded earlier to the fact that the supporters that you had were eager to break the stereotypes that you encounter in politics. As you grow out the movement, which I'm sure is one of the tasks you will give to yourself, do you see the further breaking down of these political stereotypes being one of the perhaps defining roles that you would give to an expanding movement?
Definitely. I think we are trailblazers, and what you'll be seeing more of as we build out of the movement is a particular emphasis on building future leaders, a particular emphasis on making sure that Guyanese men and women are able to tap into that potential that they have to lead. we have the youngest population in CARICOM. And so emphasis has to be placed on making sure that we equip the next generation of leaders. I'm already in my head thinking next generation, because I will not be doing this for forever. I have a retirement age planned. And so for me, it is how do we equip the next generation of leaders so that we could pass the baton on, so that, in Guyana, sometimes appears as if you have to be embarrassed out of a position or die in the office. There is an inability to mentor and to pass the baton on and sit back and look at the next generation execute. We plan to make that in Forward Guyana a thing of the past. And so a lot of mentoring, a lot of community outreach. We've just launched a membership drive where people can come and sign up to be members. We've already set the structure in place. And of course, we have partners who want to continue with us. So we're finalizing the legal framework for that. So there's a lot happening, but at all times you'll continue to see. I'll tell you a very simple thing that we did, that we just did it because it was the right thing to do, but it sent waves through the country. If you come to Guyana during elections time, every utility pole you will see has a flag of some party on it. And so once elections are over, they're left there and they become tattered, and then the place looks a mess. And so Forward Guyana decided, you know what? We have to take the flags on our banners. Not because it's just the right thing to do. Elections are done, take them down. The reaction that we got to that was out of this world. So those types of things, just doing something because it's right, and then just doing it the right way is what we're passionate about bringing. I guess what you're hearing me say is that Guyana has much more than it has ever had, and it will have much more in the future. Right now, we have a country that is earning $10 million per day in oil revenue, but with a population of less than 1 million. The reality is, however, that unless we bring our citizens up to a particular level, they're not going to be able to enjoy that bounty. And so invariably, foreigners are going to come in, and we're going to have Guyanese citizens being relegated to second and third class citizens. And that is primarily because we have not done the work to make sure that the mindset of our citizens, Lee Kuan Yew, somebody that I devour his writings, said, you cannot inhabit first world infrastructure with a third world mentality. And so if it's the only thing that we can do in our lives in the Forward Guyana movement is to begin to raise the consciousness of the people of Guyana, then we would have accomplished so much.
One of the things that will happen in the new parliament, the government will enter with a larger majority, occupying more seats in the parliament. The combined opposition would have significantly less seats in the parliament. Could the combined opposition, be of any sort of effectiveness without consolidating, coordinating, speaking with each other, and sort of establishing some level of some framework to work together in the National Assembly?
There would have to be a framework to work together. That would be absolutely required. But, I am an eternal optimist. And so I said when we started on this journey that the aim was for us to have a parliament where we were forced to speak to each other. It appears as though that is what will happen in the opposition side. And I'm confident come 2030, we're going to see a parliament that will have to speak, both sides of the house, in order to get anything passed. The fact that they held power by one seat prior has the same effect now, them having 2 or 3 more seats, because they will still be able to carry the bills. But I think the fact that you're having a more dynamic opposition will be a problem for them. For us, it will be important for us to coordinate. For us, it will be important for us to leverage the strength of every member of the opposition, understanding what that member's strength is and leveraging it to represent the interests of the people of Guyana. The opposition leader, who will be the opposition leader, has no political experience, has never been in parliament. And so he will have to lean heavily on people who have been there before and who understand how parliament works and the way it would function to be effective. And so I anticipate a robust engagement between among the three parties in opposition.
You speak of some level of collaboration among the opposition parties. Do you see that going any further? There may be people who may figure that going forward it may lead to parties, perhaps for the next elections, actually finding some way of merging together. Do you see that for your movement?
Early days yet, but even in the launching of the movement, we've made it clear that we're open to alliances with people who share our principles and our priorities and who are prepared to serve the people of Guyana. Like I said, it's early days yet, but we have always been open to collaboration as long as it is within the parameters of what we believe is best for the people of Guyana. In the National Assembly as well, my personal paradigm has always been, not because you are in opposition, you oppose everything. If there are measures that the government is bringing that are good, it could be supported. If they need to be tweaked to be more effective, we are prepared to make those proposals. But at all times, the North Star has to be the best interests of the people of Guyana.
Amanza, when you made that hard decision to go off on your own and leave your former party, the PNC, which was a formidable political party in Guyana, did you look down the road and sort of see and have a sense that it was so off base that the reality today was really something that it was heading towards?
In fact, I was very vocal about this with the current leader of the party, and we had our disagreement on this. It gives me no pleasure to say that what I was warning about has happened, and that I've been vindicated because, members in the PNC, members of the APNU are hurting, and I certainly take no pleasure in that. But I spend, contrary to popular belief, a lot of time on the ground. I spend a lot of time listening. I spend a lot of time sitting on the corner and so on, and hearing and feeling the pulse of the nation. And the nation was anxious for change. We are still very convinced that these elections were not free and fair. We are convinced that there has been massive usurpation of the will of the people of Guyana, using Commonwealth citizens, using Venezuelan citizens, using Brazilian citizens, based on some legal maneuverings that the PPP did in the life of the last parliament, and some legal systems that they've put in place that sort of gutted the requirement to be registered as a Guyanese citizen. And so the groundwork was laid long before that. Notwithstanding that, however, the obvious repudiation of APNU and the rise of WIN will give, I think, the men and women in the PNC cause for pause and reflection. And for me, I wish them nothing but the best. Like I said, that is the political home that I grew up in, and so you will get no ill intent from me towards them. It is, however, important that they hold leaders accountable, that they hold those persons in authority accountable for delivering what they need to deliver to the people of Guyana.
Amanza, the two major political parties in Guyana, the PPP and the PNC, don't have a history of elevating women to the leadership of the party, and that is to say, as the presidential candidate, except for in the case of Mrs. Jagan, who became the president of the country for a very short period of time, eventually handing over the presidency to Mr. Jagdew. Is it your view that these two parties have not yet come to grips with the value of women as leaders? As we've seen across the Caribbean, women are leading some of the major territories in the region. Is it that these two parties still are grappling with elevating women as their presidential candidates?
I think they are. I think the patriarchal nature of our society is far more embedded than we think. I mean, look at the fact that the APNU of a 12-member team only have 3 women, and I, coming from there, know that they're competent and capable women who could have been sent to the National Assembly. So there seems to be retrogression. What I anticipate that the PPP will do is, simply because they will want to make it a point of campaigning, they will appoint more than a quarter of their share to women. Will certainly do that to just make a point. But it is alive and it is well. This belief that women can't lead, women can't manage, notwithstanding that the studies from Yale, from Harvard, and all of these prestigious institutions show otherwise. And so very often it is for women like myself who decide, you know what, we're going to have to step up and take up space. We're not going to wait for this to be handed to us. We know what our potential is. We know what we can do. We know the contributions that we have to make. And so we're going to step forward, and we do not need your permission to do it. We don't need your permission to do it.
I want to follow up on that. What was there a single moment, a single event that happened in the PNC that led ultimately to the decision, this is it, I am gone?
I could not say that there was a single event. I think I know the straw that broke the camel's back, though. I was the foreign relations spokesperson for the opposition, and based on reports, a very good one. And I noticed that suddenly I was being excluded from meetings that the party would be meeting, or parliamentary, a cohort would be meeting with the diplomatic community, for example. And I'd learn about it on Facebook. And then when Parliament, and this is the first time I'm actually speaking about this, but when Parliament dissolved, it didn't dissolve actually. When the date for elections were announced, I sought a meeting with the leader of the opposition, then leader of the PNC, and we met for an hour. And after that, I realized, okay, well, clearly, there's no room here in the inn for me, so a decision had to be made. But it was easy to make the decision because there was already this yearning in me to fix the broken system.
I want to follow up on that a little. In good entities, strong entities, there is usually a mechanism for people to seek redress for their grievances, to bring their grievances to the fore rather than have grievances festered and lead to the erosion of the institution. That is to say, one doesn't have to formally, very often, request to meet with the leader or the person with whom they have a grievance, that sometimes even informally. Wasn't there that opportunity that if you were aggrieved, that you could have within the structure that exists, wasn't there a mechanism that you could have said, I don't feel valued, I don't feel as if my contribution is valued? There's a frank discussion on that, and that leads to the redress of it, that so that it is addressed rather than a sort of a deterioration over time.
It was not for the want of trying. All such avenues, the elders, all of it was, all of the avenues were explored. This is actually the first time that I've spoken this much on the issue, because for me it was important that I not say this, lest it be thought that I would have been using this as an advantage or some play for sympathy, because people are very quick to accuse people of playing victim, etc. And it's incredible that I have sort of maintained silence on this, not saying beyond what I wanted to say. But the leader of the PNCR of APNU would say at the press conference last week that, essentially that I got sympathy votes.
Is there a specific goal that you set yourself in this term to say, here are a few things that I want to achieve, and you, meaning yourself and Forward Guyana Movement?
Certainly. Pushing for electoral reform, pushing for the cleansing of the voters list. Guyana cannot go into another elections with what we went into the last time. The frail nature of the peace that we enjoy in this country is not going to hold. And so you'll see that heavy in our agenda. The reform of the Guyana Elections Commission is first and foremost on our agenda. GCOM, as we call it, does not reflect the political reality of this country. It is the only electoral body in this part of the hemisphere of its kind that is so heavily politicized that no decision can be made at a technical level unless it is ratified at a political level. And that has to change. So we're going to be pushing for electoral reform. We're going to be pushing for the reform we're going to be pushing for institutional reform in the context of GCOM. We're going to be pushing legislative reform in the context of harmonization of the electoral laws. We are going to be pushing for the review of the residency requirement for Commonwealth citizens, because we've seen a disproportionate amount of Bangladeshis, East Indians, etc., come to Guyana in the thousands and vote in our elections when there is no reciprocity in those countries as it relates to foreigners. Indian nationals living outside of India can't vote in their elections, but you have Bangladeshis, etc., who are coming here and are by and large enjoying a right that ought to be for Guyanese only. So they're coming, they're affecting the political destiny of this nation, the political reality of this nation, and then they're jumping on a plane and they're leaving. These are things that have to be tackled. And this is where for Guyana, we're going to be expending our energy and, of course, representing those issues that matter the most to people. The cost of living, safety and security, jobs, those types of bread and butter issues that the people of Guyana trust us to represent for them in the halls of the National Assembly.
Amanza, as we come to a close, I want to give you the opportunity to speak to those who doubted you, those who criticized you, and those who supported you and stood with you through this struggle, through the tough decision, through the campaign, and through your rise and your success. How do you address all those categories of people?
To those that stood with us, thank you. To those that doubted us, keep looking. You'll be very interested in the coming months and years, because we intend to be around for a very, very long time. We are happy to partner with those of like mind. We are blessed to be able to be given a voice to represent the ordinary Guyanese man, woman, and child. For me, like people who know me, they know that I've never been somebody that gloats. I get the work done and I move on to the next thing. And so my mind is already set on how do we build this movement out? How do we make it a truly inclusive organism that can truly represent the people of Guyana? We want to impact policy in this country at such a profound level that in another 5 years, our legal, our institutional, and our organizational arrangements will look completely different to what they do now, far more advanced and far more tailored to delivering real results for the people of Guyana. To my family and to my loved ones, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. Nigel London, I could not ask for a more supportive second in command, who has been a bulwark really of a lot of us of this movement. He's known for being a radical, but I tell people, if it doesn't matter who you are, he is the type of person that if you are hurt, he will stop and he will tend to you, much like the Samaritan would tend to any Guyanese that needs help. And so I'm so grateful for each and every one of the persons who came alongside us. And the best really is yet to come. We may be one seat, but it is one seat that will be used for massive impact, because change never really required, change starts always with a minority and then it grows. And so we'll be growing, we'll be thriving. And thank you, Vivian and Kendall, for having me on here today.
Today, our conversation with Amanza Walton-Desir has given us an opportunity to hear her inspiring story, what it means to lead, to break barriers, and to shape the future. Our deepest thanks to Amanza for sharing her stories, her insight, and her vision for a better Guyana. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Caribbean Tea. Be sure to follow us, Caribbean Tea, the Caribbean Tea podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on Amazon. Until next time, I'm Vivian Williams along with Kendall Morgan. Stay engaged, stay informed, and keep the conversation alive. This is Caribbean Tea.